So this is some lower quality footage that I have back from 2019. This is the beginning of the journey up in the Adirondacks in upstate New York. So my dad bought this place back when I was about 1 or 2 years old, and I've always loved coming up here as a kid. My dad built this cabin out of ash. These shingles right here are split by hand. A lot of Amish up here. There's 32 acres of land up here that I recently took over. I wanted to come up here and build something that I could call my home away from home. You'll notice that there is a cabin up there, but the cabin is in bad shape and needs a lot of work. And I wanted to build something small that we could stay in and maybe fix up this cabin one day. So I brought up a whole bunch of equipment and some help, carved this little road in, and here's where the little cabin is going to be, the tiny cabin. So we're setting up sonotubes right now. This is going to be the foundation of the new cabin. This property is about an hour and 45 minutes from my house. Just wasn't feasible to set up a full basement. I didn't have a lot of money to spend, and I didn't have the time to spend either. I wanted something that I could just slap up a cabin and have something to stay in that was more than a tent, more than a camper, something that my family could stay in, which at the time was just 3 of us. Noah wasn't even born yet. So here I am just putting in a little road, and here we are 6 years later, ready to come up again and do some serious work. At this time, Noah was 5 years old. So we headed up there, brought some equipment that I planned on leaving up there. That way I didn't have to mess around with transporting equipment. Just go up in a car if I wanted to, and still get a lot of stuff done. So here's the camper, and here's some batteries that I put in there, and there's an inverter in there. And that's how we got power without running a generator. I had a few solar panels I set up on the ground. So in this video, we're just doing a bunch of work with equipment to clear some land, make some more space, make the driveway bigger, installing a well underneath the cabin, so it's nice, easy access. Don't have to worry about pipes freezing. The water just drains right back into the well when it's done. And here we're setting up gray water pipes just for dishes and showers. And there's the foundation right there. Very simple. Very cost effective and quick. So here I am building a solar shed. This is where I planned on housing the batteries and just having all the solar equipment in one place. I need to keep it heated, so I wanted to insulate it very well. The reason you want to keep it heated is because when you're using any type of lithium battery, which this is lithium iron phosphate, you can't let them get below freezing when you're charging them. So they won't charge when they're freezing. And so I wanted to put this in here, insulate it very well, put a small heater in there that turns on at about 33 degrees. So this solar shed worked pretty well. So we started building the cabin. The boys love being out here, building this cabin. It was only 12 by 16, but with 2 stories, there was enough room. So back in 2019, I called up the power company and I asked them the big question. What would it take to put in power to this property? We were 1,200 feet from the nearest pole, 1,200 feet that was on our own property. What could we do about it? They said the only way to do it was to pay them $27,000 to run a few poles, and I was not allowed to touch primary line even as a licensed electrician. So I said, no way, $27,000? I'll take $5,000 and invest in some solar and battery equipment, and that's what I did. But as time went on and it got colder, I realized no matter how much insulation you have, there's nothing to replace the heat that you're losing. And really cold nights in the wintertime up there, in the negative teens, negative 20s, I ended up using a lot of battery to heat those batteries. That was very counterproductive. The solar shed worked pretty good for a while, but eventually it got to the point where every time we came up, the power was just depleted to nothing. So then I built this bunker, mini bunker. And the one purpose of this, the main purpose, was to house those batteries so they wouldn't get below freezing. The idea was to not put any insulation on the floor, let the heat radiate out of the earth and into that room and keep it above freezing. And it was a dual purpose building. We could also bring people up and let them stay in there as a guest. And it would keep food and water above freezing. And other things too. This thing worked out really well. The whole thing was built out of concrete with ICF forms. It was super insulated. These ICF deck forms, you can use them to make floors or ceilings or roofs. It creates a suspended concrete slab, and also you can see it's very thick insulation, and these are the smallest ones they have. They only get thicker from there. So here we are pouring the roof, waterproofing it, putting solar panels on the front. You can see it's already backfilled on the top. We are running out of time, running out of weather, but it's done. And now I'm ready to set some equipment up inside.
It's warm in here, huh?
Yeah. open eye. Cut it. What?
All the way up to it. Go just from the bottom. There you go.
There we go.
Alright, so it is nighttime here. I just got done plowing the driveway and everything, so I didn't really have a lot of time, but I'm inside this bunker. Here's the utility room. I got my battery backup right here. This is a 12 volt battery. This is a server rack 12 volt 400 amp hour battery, 2000 watt Renogy pure sine wave inverter. I just have a 100 amp charger for that, for charging up that 12 volt battery. That's just my backup system that I had over my solar shed. I just sort of transferred it to here so I could have some power in here. So right now we are running a diesel heater, this little 2 kW. This thing, I filled it up with like, I don't even think it takes a half a gallon of diesel, and I've run it for like 2 days straight on it, and it's still got like a quarter tank. I don't know. So the main reason why I'm up here right now is to hook up all the electric, transfer all my electrical components, my battery and solar stuff from my solar shed into here so that I don't need to heat the space surrounding them anymore. Because lithium iron phosphate batteries like this and like the other ones that I'm going to bring in here, you can't charge them when they're below freezing. So one of the whole purposes of me building this was so that I could have this space that would never be below freezing. So I've been successful so far. I've been in the negative teens. I came in here and it was still almost 40 degrees. So I would say that's pretty successful. It doesn't get too much colder than that around here, maybe once in a while, but overall I'm very happy with this whole setup that I have here. It was very time consuming and very expensive, but I got what I need. Alright, so check that out. Got some lights. So I just kind of temporarily hooked everything up with just a regular cord. But it's like 1:30 in the morning, so I'm going to continue this tomorrow. I'm just trying to get as much as I can done while I'm here, because it doesn't really matter whether it's day or night. We've got a lot to do inside, but I do think it's pretty cool that we got lights. So we're going to put more of them out here. One right there, probably one right there, and then that's it. And then some more outside too, underneath the solar panels. Alright, so I guess we're going to start out with the fun stuff first. I got that conduit that I ran a couple weeks ago right there. I used the flex conduit. And I ran it underneath the cabin. So now I got to go bring that into the panel box, which is in the middle. So I got to do a bunch of crawling around underneath the cabin. So we'll get the fun part out of the way right now. That's the way I like to do things. Oh, loving it. I gotta unfreeze those so that they actually can straighten out, and we're gonna go up into the wall with them. But they're just so stiff and they just don't want to change directions.
diciembre.
I could do that. Working smarter, not harder.
Alright. Feed
What?
this into here.
Okay.
That's good.
Now, how far am I supposed to put the take the wire out? Oh, that's right. You put soap on this.
Hang on, I got a little bit of a tangle here.
So we are back up here again, like 3 weeks later. I want to get this all situated because, as always, in the middle of the winter, the batteries died because they were heating themselves. So I really need to get those batteries installed in here. So I wanted to change something. I wanted to put some hardy backer board behind the inverters and panel. I should have done that before, but trying to think of every single thing that you need up here is really daunting. I always make a list and I try to sit there and think of every single thing that I need, but the hardy backer just sort of slipped my mind. So let's just kind of pop those panels off. We'll put the hardy backer on and act like it was there right from the beginning. Alright, so right now I just need to cut a channel in this foam. So I'm using the Sawzall to cut the plastic ribs first, and then I'll use the multi-master to kind of fine tune it, and then I just pull it out with a hammer. But yeah, I just need to put a box right there, run the conduit in the wall, and then I'll foam it in. Two of those in there. It's easy. It's out there. Oh, you're good. You're good. We only have light here, so.
Oh, yeah. Right there. Oh, the green one came out. This is the second one. And then we can have one right.
Yes. Good.
Why does it flicker? Oh, now it's not really. Hold on. It didn't want to go through the right way. There. It's going through right. And that's about all you need.
Okay, I got 3 wires so far. Just push a little bit more. Keep going.
What?
Keep going. A little bit more. I think that's good. Hold on. Yeah, I got all of them out now.
So we got our 2 FMCs or BX. So now I'm gonna foam these in. That secures them in place as well as brings the insulation value back to the wall. I'm putting foam behind them and in front of them as well. And I got like little screws holding it in place. Alright, so the way this is going to work is this is going to be my main inverter. I'm going to have another inverter right here, identical to that. This is going to be the load center that comes from this inverter, and later on this inverter as well. This is the conduit for the PV wire, or the solar panels. So right now, there's wire coming from the cabin, which has 6 solar panels on the roof, and it has 2 on the porch that are vertical. So I've got 2 different sets of wires coming from there so that I can get PV input from both of them separately. So for the main array that's on the roof, I'm going to use this charge controller. This is a 150/70, which means 150 volts max, 70 amps max. I'm going to put this right underneath here, right in the middle, because it's going to be the main one. And then I'm going to put 2 smaller ones on the side, one there and one there. And the reason I'm not using this inverter for the charge controller is because these use standby power of around 50 watts. And when I'm not here, there's absolutely no reason to have that standby power. That's just going to be a huge waste of power. So it's much more efficient to just use this while I'm here, turn it on while I'm here while I need the power. So I'm going to do the big charge controller right here, 2 small ones. One small one is going to be for the panels that are on the porch. There's just 2 panels that are vertical. In the wintertime, I really need them. I rely on them because they don't get snow on them like the roof does. And then I'm going to add another charge controller over here for the panels that are on the porch roof here on this little bunker. And then eventually I'm going to run one more array around back of this bunker, and I'll probably run that right into the inverter. The problem with these charge controllers is there's not really a way to keep it up to code by keeping the PV wires encased in metal conduit. Like these inverters, they have knockouts, so you can go right into it with that FMC, and that makes it code compliant. I mean, I guess most people use them for like RVs and campers and stuff, so in that case you wouldn't need to have it up to code. I'm really not sure how that works in a house, but this is not a house. This is a bunker. This is a root cellar. This is a whatever you want to call it. So, you know, we ran conduit right up to it. I think that's good enough. This is a utility room. You know, this room is meant for this. So I think that anything inside of this door probably doesn't really need to be in conduit. And eventually I'll have an inspector inspect this, but, you know, I guess we'll see what happens. Okay, so I ran out of red 10 gauge THHN, so we're gonna have to put some red tape on this. So I should probably mention that I have 400 watt panels. There's 6 of them on the roof, 2 of them on the porch, and 2 of them on the bunker porch. So altogether that's about 3,200 watts. Okay, so I brought a ground from all the solar panels in through here. There's a ground lug on the left hand side here. I stripped off a bare spot, I wrapped it around the ground screw, and then we'll bring it back up and into this panel. And then I also need to bring a ground from these two into this panel as well. Everything needs to be grounded into this panel. Okay, so this is just a small little 100 volt 20 amps, but it's perfect for 2 panels, 3 panels, 4 panels. Depends on how you have it set up, depends on the voltage. In this case I'm running 2 panels that are about 35 volts each. The problem is, if you have the voltage too low, it won't turn on. So if you have a 48 volt battery system, it says that you have to have at least 5 volts more than that to start it, but then you have a max of 100. But yeah, that's a cute little thing compared to that. It's a lot cheaper though. You know, one thing that's nice about this Hardy backer, it's got a 1-inch grid. So anytime you're hanging something, you can just follow these grids. You don't even have to put a level on anything. It's actually really nice. So in this case, I actually ran out of black wire. So I'm gonna have to put black tape on this. From what I read, it's okay to do that with smaller wires. I know with AC, you can't do that under a certain size wire, and I think it's number 6. Anything below number 6, and you can't phase tape it. But with DC, DC is hard because it's one of those things where you just really don't, there's not like a clear set of codes for a lot of things. So, but as far as I can see, phase taping is totally fine with DC. So right now I'm running 10 gauge Romex. This inverter can put out 3,000 watts, which if you do the math, that's around 25 amps at 120 volts. So I also ran number 10 THHN into the house with 2 hots. I'm using 1 hot right now for 120 volts, but if I want 240, I can in the future, and I can get 6,000 watts. These inverters can be paralleled together to get split phase 240 volts. I haven't needed 240 volts yet, but in the future, if I want it, I got it. A lot of the stuff that I'm using in this video and in a lot of my past videos is from signaturesolar.com. They've supported me with a bunch of projects, and they have really good support and they have good products. So if you ever need anything, I'll leave a link in the description. I forgot to bring my heat gun, so I'm just using a lighter. It works. These bus bars are rated for 300 amps a piece, so you can hook up quite a system with these. In this case, I think I'm only using about 60 amps max, more like 50. Even if I ran the other inverter into these bus bars, we're still only looking at about 110 amps altogether, so well within the max range. So I have racks for these server rack batteries, and I did bring them, but they take a while to set up. I just didn't have the time to do it. I'm probably going to do it sometime in the spring. Keep them neat and organized, and that way if you need to slip one out to replace it or whatever, if you need to do something with the warranty, or it's easy to slip them out one at a time. In this case it would be a little bit of a pain, but oh well, we'll deal with it for now. The routing that I have on these cables is just temporary. Right now I'm waiting on a T-class fuse to go into before going into these bus bars. And then we can organize it, make it look a lot better. But right now I'm waiting on those T-class fuses. So I didn't realize this at first about DC circuits. This is a circuit breaker and it's got a line and a load, and you can't switch them up. It's not like an AC breaker where the power can go either way. So you'll notice that it says load on the bottom and line at the top. So you'll notice that the wire is going in opposite of what you would want or what you would think. It kind of looks silly going in from the bottom to the top, and then I'll go out from the bottom of the breaker, go up into the inverter. But that's how it's supposed to be done. So this device right here is called a shunt, and basically what it does is measures the current and the voltage going to and from the batteries. It tells you how much you're charging the batteries, it tells you how much is left on the batteries, it tells you how much they're discharging, it also tells you the voltage, and it records all that in a graph too. So this one has Bluetooth capabilities, and some of them also can be read from a screen that has a long wire that you can run, 20 feet away or so. This one, I can monitor it from anywheres. I have it hooked up to the internet, so I can view the whole system from anywheres, and it gets hooked up to the negative cable coming from the batteries before it goes to the inverter. And you can see there's a small red wire. That's what actually gives the thing power, and it gets the negative from the negative cable, but it measures the current from the negative cable. The red one is just to give it power. Alright, so right now I'm actually using my backup power. That's a 12 volt battery with a Renogy 2000 watt inverter, and that's running everything. Here, the cabin, and even the battery storage shed, or the solar shed, which is running the internet. Everything is running off of that right now. So what I'm going to do is first fire this up, make sure everything's alright. Then all I got to do is disconnect that system and turn on this breaker, and then everything is backfed. So right now I should be able to just first boot up all these batteries. They should all be mostly charged. I think they're about 80% or so. So then I should be able to turn on this breaker. Turn on the switch. And there we go. 20 volts. So the communications should all be set up at this moment. Look at that, 78% battery. It's got no load on it right now. So right now, I'm gonna set up a light. Shut this off. Turn that on. There we go. Now I am running on this inverter. So let's see. Yeah, I mean, it's only 150 watts, 180 watts. Not too bad. So now what I got to work on is hooking up all the charge controllers. I got to work on getting my Raspberry Pi in here as like the central communication station that enables me to monitor this from anywheres. So every one of these Victron modules, whether it's a charge controller or whether it's the shunt or I have a small 48 volt inverter, all those have a communication cable that goes into the Raspberry Pi. I might have it like right here or something, and then that way I can see everything that's going on individually. I can see like each charge controller will have all its parameters. The shunt will be like the main thing that tells me everything that's going on, and then also the 48 volt inverter, which I don't really need to know much about that, but that will run my internet while I'm gone, so I don't have to use this, because that has like a 1 watt standby versus actually I think it's like 70 watts on this thing. So that wire coming from that charge controller, I think that's a number 8 gauge. So it could be 10 gauge because it's about 22 amps coming from that string. So I have 6 panels, 400 watts a piece. I'm at about 107 volts max, and I think it comes out to around 22 amps. So a little bit bigger than 12 gauge can handle. 10 gauge could handle it pretty easily, but I just had 8, so I used that. That wire that I'm running right now from that 500 watt inverter, that's a 48 volt inverter, so 56 volts is about what it would run at the max. So it's only about 8 or 9 amps going through that at max capacity, so you could use 14 gauge. If you notice, I'm being careful not to touch anything on the 48 volt system. It is live right now. I have never touched 48 volts. I don't know if it will shock you or not, but I'm not taking any chances. So I'll just try to work around it while it's live and just be careful. Not gonna lie, it was not easy trying to figure out how to route all these wires. You know, I'm just making this up as I go. I have kind of an idea of how I want to run things, but then you got to run the wires, and it is just, it's not easy. You can make several attempts and still make it look like garbage. So I had to redo things quite a few times. You know, I'm pretty new to DC and solar, but I have a good idea of how things work. I've done enough of these systems, but making things look good is a whole different story. Alright, so we are making some progress here. So I'll give you a rundown on what everything is. This is a Raspberry Pi. Well, this is a Raspberry Pi, and this is just a cheap screen that I bought for it. It's touchscreen and everything. So that shows me some good parameters. It's actually better on your phone, which was the main point in getting this. This screen, while I'm in here, yeah, it's great, but I can also just whip out my phone and just see better stuff. But yeah, 46% is what the batteries are at right now. I am using 507 watts, and it tells me the voltage on the bottom left, and then the amperage on the bottom right. And then I don't have any solar panels hooked up right now, otherwise that would show something. And then that right there, that, I don't know, you can't really see that, that 5 watts right there, that's what this is using. This is just the 500 watt inverter that I keep on while I'm gone, just because it has such a low idle draw. So I'll have that powering this and my internet, which I gotta still hook that up, but that way I don't have to keep these inverters on. And 500 watts is plenty because my internet uses about 40, and with this another 5, so 45 altogether. So each one of these has one of these cables, which is a VE direct to USB cable. So basically it just goes right from each one of these components to a USB cable, and then I just have this small USB hub here. So I have 4 things plugged in right now. I have this plugged in, this plugged in. These are 2 charge controllers. This is the inverter, and that's the shunt. The shunt is what tells you what's going in and out of the batteries to give you an idea of where your batteries are at. That's this thing on the bottom here. That's all the parameters from the shunt. So basically, from the batteries, you hook up to, in this case, a bus bar, and then you go directly to the shunt with the negative cable, and then from there you go to everything else. So I'm going to put some Class T fuses going from these red cables before it hits that bus bar, so that each one of them is individually fused. I bought some breakers, but I got doing some research, and breakers are not great to use for this kind of thing. The Class T fuse is really the only option, so I will hook that up. But in the meantime, you know, we got the bus bars for the batteries, and then the bus bars for everything else. So I'm trying to keep everything as neat as possible. It is kind of hard, and I've had to redo several things. But this is where I'm coming down to the mess right now. I got to do something with this. Maybe some zip ties, get them all like into a bunch right here. So at this point, before I leave, what I really need to do is hook up the solar panels, which that's not too hard. And then I also need to hook up the charge inverter, which is going to be what charges those batteries from dirty power. And the charge inverter is going to be what converts dirty power from a non-inverter generator to good power that you can put into these batteries. So I need to run that out to a generator plug on the outside. So I want to kind of circle back to that charge inverter. Basically, these inverters can charge the batteries with AC power. You could plug a generator right into these inverters and use it to charge the batteries. The problem is, if you don't use an inverter generator, you're using dirty power, and you can ruin the inverter doing that. So the better way to do it is to get a charge inverter, which charges the batteries directly without using the inverter, and it converts that dirty power into clean power. Or you could just get an inverter generator, which I have two generators up here. I have a small 2500 watt inverter generator, and then I have a bigger 4000 watt non-inverter generator. One thing I also want to mention about this charge inverter is that the newer ones have more updated features, such as you can automatically turn on a 2-wire generator with the new charge inverter. You can set it to parameters where when it gets low, it'll automatically turn on an auto start generator. So I'll show you that charge inverter in a minute, but here's the cables going from it into the bus bar again after the shunt, so that you can measure the parameters of your charging. And that charge inverter is good for up to 5,000 watts if you're using 240 volts of AC power going into it. It also takes 120 volts if you want to use a smaller generator. You're just limited to about half of the full 5,000 watts, so about 2,500, maybe a little bit more if you're using 120. But I'm using 240 here. Go. That's not a permanent location for that. I'm just putting it here because I really need to charge these batteries before I leave today. I was hoping to have it right here. I gotta find the mounting hardware. I'm pretty sure I had mounting hardware at one point, but I can't find it. But I have another one of these that I can grab the hardware off of anyway, so we'll get it dialed in here. But look at that. We're charging at 2,000 watts. And but there was already about a 500 or 600 watt load, so really we're charging about 2,600 watts right now. So here we are about a month later. I just want to wrap up this video. So I want to install one more of these. This is a DC isolator, which basically is your disconnect between your solar panels and any power going inside. Just in case something happens inside, you can quickly shut it off from the outside. So this one has 2 strings. So right now I have the string that's on the roof, and I have the string right down below where that's the vertical panels that I use in the wintertime, which you can see it's a lot of work to keep those panels going when there's 2 feet of snow on them. So I want to make a spot where I can make 2 more strings. These solar panels are going to be 1 string, and then when it gets warmer out, I'm going to put another string there of like a vertical fence, like probably between 6 and 10 panels over there, because that's the southern facing side. And vertical panels work really well when you have a lot of snow, because they don't collect any snow. And in the wintertime, the sun is really low anyways, so the angle against them works pretty good. But for right now, I just want to put the isolator box in. I'll hook these up to it for now, and then later on I can just run a conduit from there over and tie into the panels that I put over there. And the panels that I put over there will probably actually be hooked right into the inverter instead of going into these MPPTs. So these MPPTs, they're charge controllers. I like the idea of having these because each string, even if it's a smaller string, you can control it separately from everything else. So if you have a big array, like I have this bigger one for the ones on the roof, that works good. But you don't want to tie that with the smaller array because it's sort of like the weakest link is where it breaks. If you have it tied in parallel, then it adds up the current, but it limits it to the lowest voltage. So if you have one array that's not working and the other is, it's the one that's working is going to take some of the voltage. I know they have diodes in them, but from what I'm researching, it still does take some voltage. And then if you have it tied in series, all it takes is one panel or even half a panel to knock out the whole string and make the whole string half as efficient. Because I think the way it works is the top of the panel has one diode and the bottom of it has another. So if the bottom of one panel isn't working, then all of the bottoms of the panels aren't working if you have it in series. I could be a little bit wrong about that, but that's about the gist of it. So in other words, I don't want to tie all my solar into the inverter because that's only got one tracker on it, one MPPT. Even though it's got great voltage input range, because you can go up to 500 volts, that's excellent. But you only want to tie one string into that. And I'll save that string for the one that's over there where I put between 6 and 10 panels vertically as like a fence. And you can use these inverters in standby mode and just receive solar but not have it on and wasting power, which I've thought about doing. I do have 2 of these actually. I could put them both in and have 2 strings, but in the future I may even want to install another string. So we'll save these. I'll put another MPPT right here, and then that way we can have 3 separate MPPTs that I can keep these inverters off and just use those. Oh. I get down like that too.
It wasn't hard. It was like really easy. And
Yeah.
I didn't need to clean that off. I just cleaned it off as a bonus for you.
Oh. Yeah, that's how I get down because when I'm doing it, I'm by myself, so.
Really, you have to remember I'm kind of nimble and I don't mind heights and I'm
Yeah.
flexible and. Oh, he caught us.
With the screw in his mouth.
We're just having fun.
What are you doing?
He's supposed to be up. We
Just
told him.
came down here.
Go back up. Go ahead, go back up.
now I went out from this into the building on the bottom, and on the top I'm just going to use one of these and go straight in with my PV wire from my solar panels. And I'm going to hook these two in series. They're about 30 volts a piece, so on a good day they might see 35 volts, so altogether that'll be 70 volts. And I'm going to use the same MPPT controller, so it's going to be 100 volt max, so we'll be at 70 max, which will be perfect. It'd be nice to get 3 of them, but 3 of them will bring you over voltage when it's really cold out, like today. I want to make sure that you understand that you can go over the current rating of your charge controller, but you can never go over the voltage rating. And you want to pay close attention, because on a really cold day, that panel will produce more voltage than it says that it will. So you always want to put like a 85% power factor in there, just to make sure that you don't go over voltage, because if you do, you will fry the charge controller, and I've done it before. It's not fun. It will limit the current, but it doesn't know how to limit the voltage. So positive goes to negative. This is positive, and that's negative. A lot of these DC isolators will have room for 2 strings in them. This one does. And you can see there's a knockout on the top left hand side. That's what I'll use to go in with my conduit for my bigger string in the future. I want to leave room for expansion. That way everything's already run inside. All I got to do is now run some wires from those panels into this DC isolator, and I'm done. Okay, so usually you want to get the Smart Solar, which means it's got Bluetooth in it. The problem with the other ones that don't have Bluetooth, if you don't get those, and say you start out your system in 12 volts, well, you can never switch it to 24 or 48 volts unless you pay money for the dongle, because whatever it hooks up to first is what it stays at, the voltage. If you end up having to get a dongle, it's way more expensive than just getting the Bluetooth, which is only a few dollars more anyways. Like either one of them you can hook to a system like this, like a Servo GX, which this is like a homemade version of that. This is a Raspberry Pi. That little Raspberry Pi right there controls everything. Almost rather put it over here. Looks better, but I don't know. Just put it right here. Here's an interesting fact for you to think about. Solar is so efficient when you have high voltage. Let's just say that you have a 500 watt panel and it's 50 volts and it's 10 amps. Well, you can run up to 10,000 watts worth of panels on 12 gauge wire. Think about that. That's a lot of power on 12 gauge wire. But you can do it, and it's safe. because that's 20 amps if you put two strings together in parallel. If you run 10 panels in series times 2 in parallel, so it's 20 panels at 500 watts apiece. That's 10,000 watts off 12 gauge wire. Okay, so I got my PV wires coming in right here, and then my battery, that's battery, PV, battery, going to that bus bar. Now remember, I'm connecting everything to these two bus bars, not these. That way, this will measure the current going in and out of the batteries. You don't want to hook anything to these, because then it'll bypass that shunt there. If you bypass the shunt, then that thing will become very inaccurate very quick. So these are just the battery bus bars only, and that is for everything else. Charging and discharging all comes off of here. You know, discharging from this inverter, from that inverter, and eventually that inverter will all come off of there, and then charging from these goes off of there too. So right now, the only thing I have to do is just hook up this wire here, and that will hook up to that and give me all the parameters separately from everything else. So right now it has like a jumper in there. You pull that out, you put this in. So now I need to find a creative way to get all these wires over to here without it looking like total garbage. And this one too. Okay, so now I have 3 MPPTs. And for some reason I can't focus for you guys to see. But yeah, there's 3 of them there. So that's excellent. Alright, so I think I'm going to wrap this up now. I got this about the best I'm going to get it. I think all the wiring is acceptable. Not totally satisfied with it, but I think it'll do. So I have that left over for probably running more of the PV wire into one of these inverters. So I'll probably put a junction box there and then shoot over to one of the inverters once I get that array outside, but that probably won't be for a few months. But at least I got the 3 MPPTs. One thing that I've been trying to accomplish since I started this, and for some reason it hasn't worked out, putting these T-class fuses in. I wanted to put one on each battery before it went into this bank right here. I ordered these twice and they didn't come in. So I had to order it again. I got 1, that's it. I needed 3, 1 for each battery. I was just gonna put it right here, right between each battery. But for some reason, twice now that I've ordered them, they just haven't come in. They're just like back ordered. So I'm sure that when I go home, they'll be sitting there for me, but I'll put them in the next time I come up. I'm not gonna wait to put out this video to put those in. But this T-class fuse is what you really want. It's a much safer option than a breaker, because when it comes time to DC electricity, a breaker doesn't work like AC does. And I could ramble on for hours about that, but just know that a T-class fuse is really what you want to use. They're a little bit more expensive than a breaker, but it's just what you're supposed to use. So to recap on this, DC wire needs to be in conduit, metal conduit, once it enters a building. Most people will tell you that technically even the wire coming from batteries to the inverter needs it, but you know what? Most people don't put that in conduit. It's supposed to be 50 volts or more. You need it in conduit. So technically that's like 52 volts. But when it's drained all the way down, then it's less than 50 volts. So, you know, it's just one of those things where it's like, nah, I'm not going to worry about that. And if you had a charge controller with a few panels on it that were less than 50 volts, you could actually get away with not needing this. But all three of these are going to be more than 50 volts, so that's why I had to put this metal conduit in here. So yes, I have the charge inverter mounted upside down. I know it looks silly, but it just is what it is. You know, the cord that goes this way, that's charging, and the cord that goes that way, that's where the batteries are. So to have it flip-flopped is like, it doesn't make sense. The wires do a loop around there and then they don't even reach. So it is what it is. So like I said, eventually I'll hook this inverter up, but right now we've never needed it, so why even bother? So also one thing I wanted to let you guys know about, in this bunker, I've never got below 38 degrees. Here's a couple screenshots of different temperatures outside and inside. Right now it's negative degrees outside. So this bunker has worked extremely well. It does exactly what I wanted it to do. This time when I came up, it's been a month since I've been here and I still had half of my power in the batteries because it didn't deplete the batteries trying to heat themselves. That's exactly what I was looking for. I can use up several kilowatt hours a day trying to heat these batteries when I had this in my solar shed, and that was insulated and air sealed. But the heat radiating out of the ground is enough to keep this above freezing by quite a few degrees. All right, so it's gonna get dark in a little bit, so we're gonna go for a snowmobile ride, and by the time we get back it's gonna be dark, so I figured let's do a little explaining while there's still some daylight, because after we get back we're leaving and won't be back up for a few weeks. So like I said, I grew up in that cabin over there, and we never had power, obviously, in that cabin. We use Coleman lanterns and those wick lights. And while that was nice, it's nice to be able to have power. And like I said, the power company wanted 27 grand to run the power up to that road, which I own all the way to that road. But they will not let you run primary, even as a licensed electrician. Primary being like 17,000 volts. They'll hook up a primary pole right across the road, and then I can go secondary from there, but it's 1,200 feet. So 1,200 feet is just not feasible to run secondary. I try to limit secondary to about 250 feet. Now for this cabin, we don't use a lot of power, so I could bring some 4-aught cables in there, like URD cables. At 1,200 feet, I could probably safely get 30 or 40 amps out of it, which would do everything we need to do. But to trench 1,200 feet through the woods and use that heavy of cable and conduit and just all the work and money that's involved, it's still cheaper just to go ahead and just do solar, because then I never have a bill. I just pay once, you buy once and cry once, and then that's it. After that, you got free power. So with batteries and us not being here all the time, it's nice because the batteries charge up while we're gone, and then we use them while we're here, and if we really need to, we'll run the generator for a little while. But I definitely didn't want to run a generator all the time while we were here, which is the point of the batteries. So eventually this whole area is going to become for guests, and then I will either do something with that cabin or build another cabin out that way. If I do something with this cabin, I might end up moving it that way. That's a 24 by 24 cabin, and if I end up doing something with that, I'm probably gonna move it about 100 feet that way. And the reason is because the road is too close. I just don't like being that close to the road. And that cabin, the floor is caved in on it. So the easiest way to do that is to shove 2 I-beams through the middle of it, lift it up, get it out of there, then deal with the floor with an excavator. Just take it, it's just all falling apart. So then we can bring it to its new location, build a new floor first on top of a full foundation, which that doesn't have, then set it on top of the new floor and foundation that we have there. That's been my plan for a little while now. I don't know if it's going to change, but that's what I would like to do. So when we do that, this power station over here in that bunker will still power everything. And I'll probably clear a whole bunch of land out here to put a big array of solar panels. That way I can keep the solar panels away from whatever I'm building over there. Whether I build a new cabin or whether I use that cabin, either way, it'd be nice to not have panels right there. I have enough property where I can keep them over here and out of the way. And the south side is that way. So I'm already going to clear a bunch of land there for the house or cabin. So that will clear the trees so that I can have the solar over here. And I'm also going to put a barn over here. And I may actually just put panels on the roof, and that may be all I need. But either way, this mini bunker will continue to be the power station for the whole property. So we're gonna get going in a few minutes, and the next project up here will be finishing the inside of that bunker, making it more comfortable and suited for staying in, and then hopefully it'll be springtime by then, and we'll work on some bigger projects. So until then, I'll see you in the next video.